Well, hello there. My name is Cassie Stevens, and I'm currently addicted to making embroidered earrings. Why? Well, why not? And also because they're super lightweight. I can make them giant, and they are perfect for my ears. You want to make some color wheel earrings with me? Then here's what you're going to need. Some felt, some circly thing to trace, some scissors, and maybe something to trace the circly thing with. First, since you're making two pairs of earrings, you're going to fold the fabric in half and trace your circly thing. Normally, I would use chalk for this, but I couldn't find it, so I'm using a pin. Speaking of pins, pin the fabric together. I used a needle because I also couldn't find pins. And then you're going to cut around both circles. I like to pin it together and cut around both because then it's like a BOGO. Buy one, get one free. Boom. Now I'm going to cut out a whole bunch of different colors of circles. But I'm cutting them out a little bit smaller. So the thingamajiggy that I'm tracing, you'll notice is a different color because it's a different size. So I want the circle to be smaller. I hope you're keeping up because I barely am. You're going to cut out tons of circles. You can make it a color wheel in the rainbow order, or you could do your own version of a color wheel and just trace and cut out different circles. You could even get a little bit lazy like I did and stack about 3 sheets of felt on top of each other and cut around it that way. You'll notice I forgot all about the pinning it portion because I got lazy, man. And again, no clue where the pins are. I only found them later because that's how it goes. You find everything when you're all done with your project. All right, now that my circles are all finished cutting out, we need to make these little triangle shapes. Fold the circle in half and cut like so. Fold the semicircle in half and cut like so. And then fold the triangle in half. And if you have a smaller pair of scissors or even teeny tiny fingers, it works great. And cut like so. You're going to do that a whole bunch of times. I did it, what is that? I did 6 on 1, 6 on 12 times to make, the 12 pie pieces for you guys know what I'm talking about. I made a bunch and then I am laying them out on my color wheel. So a color wheel, in case you don't know, which is totally cool if you don't, it has red, orange, yellow. Those are the warm colors. There we have it. Then it also has green, blue, purple. Those are the cool colors. And on a color wheel, the warm colors are next to each other. The cool colors are beside each other. It goes in the order of a rainbow. Now let's start stitching these little triangles down. To stitch today, I will be using embroidery floss. Embroidery floss comes in 6 strands. I've already separated out 2 strands of embroidery floss, and now I'm feeding it through the eye of the needle. To anchor the needle when I'm stitching, I'm going to need to put a knot at the bottom. I'll show you how to do it. I like to do it twice. Make the letter O, take the tail, put it in the hole, and pull. Now I have a double knot and I'm ready to do my first stitch. Let's start today with something called a seed stitch. A seed stitch is when you start in the back, as you should with all stitches, so the knots are there. Pull your needle up until the knot stops you. Have your needle dive back down, creating a nice short stitch. Would you look at that? You just made your first stitch. Now let's do a whole bunch more. Starting again from the back, pushing it up, pull until the knot stops you, dive it back down. Now, if this stitch looks a little bit familiar to you, that's because its other name is the running stitch. But it's called the running stitch when it's going in a line, creating a dotted or a dashed line, the kind of line you might see down the middle of a road. This stitch that we're doing is almost like confetti, where the little stitches are going every which way. So you're going to be not putting them in a line or a row, but just having them go any kind of direction that you like. Like if you had a bunch of seeds and you threw them up in the air and they landed on the ground and voila, you just made a seed stitch. Now I'm just continuing that, going up and diving down. It's important to make sure that your stitches are the same length, not too long. About 1/4 inch would probably be a great size for this piece. When you're finished making your stitches, or when you've run out of thread, it's time to make a knot. Here's how you know when you need to stop. Your thread should be as long as your hand. At that point, you'll need to flip your piece over to the back to create your knot. I'm doing it once and I'll go through it again. Go under your last stitch, come back, have your needle pick up the loop that it left behind and pull. Doing that twice will make sure that you have a nice double knot and keep it secure. Hey, let's watch me do more seed stitches really, really fast. I like to add a couple of different colors to whatever I'm stitching to make that a little bit more exciting. Moving on to the back stitch. Now I'm holding this piece in place with my thumb. I'm going to do one stitch that will look just like the seed stitch, always starting in the back so your knots are there. Pull the needle up until the knot stops you. Have your needle dive back down. Now, starting in the back, jump forward a little bit. Then bring your needle back into the same hole where the thread just went down, if that makes any sense, because it didn't make sense when I said it, but I'm hoping that my visual will help it make sense. Why do you have to do that? Well, because if your needle comes up through the same hole that it dived back down, it will remove your stitch, which is good to know in case you do want to take out a stitch. But since we're not doing that here, it's important that you make one stitch. Pick up the pace, Stevens. There we go. We got one stitch. Take your time. Jump forward a little bit, of course, in the back, and then bring it back. Hence the name backstitch. Now, let's use other thread. Okay, so now I'm just going to include a different color of thread to create more backstitch. I have nothing else to say about this stitch except that you can make a really nice solid line. If you're wondering, like, why would I do this stitch instead of a running stitch? Well, remember, running stitch makes that dashed line. The backstitch can make a solid line. There, I filled the void with words. Good at that. Hey, this one is new to me. This is called the French knot. You're going to bring your needle up, just like always. Check this out. You're going to wrap the thread once, twice, hold it with your finger, dive the needle back down, and then it's important that you tug at that thread ever so gently as you bring the needle down, and you have just made, ooh la la, a French knot. I'm bringing this up. Yeah. Then wrapping it around. I'm doing this a couple of times because it took me a couple of times to learn. Once, twice, not 3 times a lady before you dive it back down and pull. It's really cool because you can do some 3-dimensional-ish looking stitches to your project. One more time, do you really want to see this again? I mean, I did have to watch and I thought I had it and then I had to rewatch. So you're probably like me. If you're really smart, then just skip ahead. You're probably really smart. So you probably won't hear this part because you've already skipped ahead. And then watch it. You're probably going to have to come back because you didn't pay attention and you thought you had it and you didn't. So I told you. Hey, this is called the flower stitch. I'm actually not really sure if this is the proper name, but it's a cool stitch and it looks like a flower, so that's what I call it. You're going to bring your thread up. Then, very close to where your thread came up, have your needle dive down, but go slowly because you want to leave a little bitty loop, which is going to be the flower petal. Once you've got your little bitty loop, hold it still with your thumb, and you're going to want to tack that loop down with a tiny stitch at the end of the flower petal. So here's my needle coming up at the end of the flower petal, and then give it a gentle tug before diving back down. If you pull too tightly, you'll lose the shape of the flower petal. And then I like to use the little spot where my needle was coming up and diving back down as the center of the flower. So here I go again, starting at the center of the flower, going up, and then I'm going to dive back down, leaving a little loop. Here I come. Take your time. Oh, yeah. Got it? All right. Dive back down. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Nobody's waiting, right? Okay, and then you're going to hold it with your thumb. Grab it. Oh, it flipped around. God, I hate when that happens. Embroidery floss sometimes doesn't want to cooperate. Sometimes it gets knotty, and it's really annoying. I'm going to hold this in place with my thumb before I make that tiny little stitch at the end of the flower petal to hold it in place. Now, when I said that sometimes embroidery floss can get a little bit knotted, it actually is super frustrating. And what I made sure to delete from a lot of the clips in this video is me having to untangle a lot of embroidery floss. If you find that happening a lot to you, you can get a candle, something that's waxy, and take your thumb, press the embroidery floss up against the candle and just kind of rub it through the candle wax. That will help to straighten out the fibers of the embroidery floss and also make it so it doesn't tangle. Did I do that? No, because I don't have candles. I'm not a witch. And I'm also kind of lazy, so I didn't do that. But I hear it works great. So there's that. Okay, so I think we've got the hang of the flower stitch. You could also, which would be amazing, combine several of these stitches together to come up with things of your own. Nobody said that there were embroidery floss or embroidery rules. I don't think there's embroidery police out there that are going to come and say, you can't do that, because that's how they would talk, I imagine. All right, so we're just putting a knot in the back. Okay, let's move on to the next stitch. Of course, making our knot in the back. And I want to make sure to show that about every time, just so you remember to always do that knot. The running stitch. This one I probably should have started with. It's just like that seed stitch. You're going up and you're coming back down. You already know the routine because it's the one that looks like the dotted line down the middle of the road. I have nothing else to say about this stitch except that it's super duper easy. It's your basic stitch. Now, sometimes my students, when they do this, they make their stitches really long because they think that that'll help them go a lot faster. And sure, it will, but their project is not going to look very nice. And also, I'm kind of mean and rotten. So I might be inclined to say, you should do that again. So here I am just making a running stitch that goes around the edge of the triangle. How about we try something called a grassy stitch? I know for a fact that that is not the name of this stitch. I'm pretty sure this is a bona fide stitch, but I don't know what it's called. And it's simply just a vertical stitch with 2 diagonal stitches coming away from it, making it look like a little bit of a grassy stitch, right? I mean, if you have a better name for it, I say go for it. Here I am just adding those lines. Look at all these stitches that we've created. We are so amazing. Think of all the different ways that you could put these together, combine them, create a little stitch picture of your own, or, like me, make yourself a color wheel. I will tell you this, I have been wearing these earrings out quite a bit, and it was only made with one piece of that white felt. I have noticed as I'm wearing them, because they are large circles, that they're kind of folding in half as I wear them. So I think I will stitch another white circle, probably with a running stitch, around the back of it or on the back of it, just to make it so they're a little bit stiffer and not so floppy. All right, next step, we are doing the blanket stitch. This is a stitch I like to use to finish things off. Stitch forward, pull, but not too much. Have your needle go back, pick up the loop, bring it forward, and you've done a blanket stitch. Jump forward again, pull the needle. Look at that tangled mess. Would you look at that? Oh, gosh. And then have it go inside the loop and pull. You're going to do that all the way around the circle, or unless you run out of thread. If you run out of thread, tie that knot, rethread it. Don't forget to put your knot at the bottom of your needle. All right, now that this is finished, the only thing left for me to do is add the little jump ring and the French hook so that I can wear these. For some reason, when I made this little video just for you, I only demonstrated how to add the jump ring. A jump ring is just like a little circle with an opening that you can pull apart to slide something like a French hook of an earring in. If you haven't watched it already, I have 2 other videos that will show you how to make earrings. And in that one, you can see how to add the French hook. But like I said, you simply pull apart that little metal circle, slide the French hook of the earring in, and close it back. All right, look at you. You just watched a long tutorial on how to make earrings, and I hope that you will make sure to make some of your own so that people can say, oh my Lanta, you are so cute. And you can be like, I know.